I'm Frank Vaughn. It's August 4th, 2025, the Civic holiday. My brother texted me this morning, a series of texts actually, and I said to him, "What do you mean you're not at work today?" And then I realized it's the Civic holiday. Now, I haven't generated an actual T4 slip from a job since 2003. Think of it, maybe 2004. I've been self-employed the entire time. I may have generated one T4 slip in 2015 when I worked for Elections Canada for the election. But I realized this morning that not only am I completely removed from pop culture, the effects of advertising, and many of these influences that allow me to navigate through life and survey the scene and understand that, number one, I'm not necessarily out of touch. I'm on a different level. And I'm not saying that like I'm way up here. I'm on a different level. I don't relate to events in the same way that others do. And I realize too that weekends have not mattered to me, let alone holidays, other than Christmas and the holidays where there's actual familial things that happen that make you feel really happy. Holidays and weekends, they've always just been more work. And it's just so different. But anyway, I hope that those who are out there that have jobs and are off today are enjoying yourself. Let's start today on a little bit of a lighter note because the last two videos have been rather heavy. And just because we're starting on a lighter note doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to get infuriated. We'll find out because I have so many tabs open. Let's see what we get to today.
Here comes the snowman.
The first weekend of August brought an unusual snowy scene for parts of northern New South Wales
Isn't this lovely? How could this ever possibly get politicized? It's snow in Australia. How fun in winter.
Australia. A cold front dropped as much as 40 centimeters of snow on August 2nd.
Look at all those happy people.
According to the National Weather Bureau, the most since the mid-1980s. Residents of the town
mid-1980s. So it happened before 1980. Isn't that amazing? This history lesson, this completely unpolitical, nonpartisan, happy story.
Took to the streets to build snowmen and engage on snow fights.
Actually, it's a very...
We're just going to ignore that wasn't a set of Australian flags, that represented something else. Let's just pretend we didn't see it. We were so happy to just see snowfall and people having snow fights being happy.
A real experience. I've always dreamt about going to the snow. I've never seen snow before in my entire life.
Dream come true.
The Weather Bureau says climate change is making conditions.
Just another chapter in the ongoing rewrite of history as global warming becomes any weather event that you can imagine. Is it snowing? It's global warming. Actually, it's not global warming, right? It's climate change. Climate change is making conditions more volatile. Do you understand what that means? Anytime the temperature swings from 30 degrees to 20 degrees, when a cold front pushes out a warm front or a warm front pushes out a cold front, they're creating the association that that's the result of climate change. Volatility just means oscillations between calm weather and unsettled weather, or hot weather and cold weather. So any volatility in the Weather Network wants you to know is the result of climate change. I am old enough to remember when the Weather Network focused on weather, and when they had a comment section, and there were lively debates in the comment section. Free speech used to reign, and then they took the comment section out. There was a moment right around 2015 when the Liberals came into office that all of a sudden the Weather Network became obsessed with climate change. And scarcely can they ever put out an article anymore that isn't propagandizing people. And also, they've changed the color coding on their maps to make you think that a 20-degree day is still boiling lava. It's fear-mongering, it's politicized, it's extremism, and also every time they push an update to this website, it actually just makes life harder. I mean, you want to get a radar map when a thunderstorm's coming through, but because they're pushing the wildfire threat, They default the radar map to a smoke map, which you don't want. You want to see if the storm's going to hit your house and maybe upset your life. Anyway, that's the Weather Network. And since we're trying to keep it light, let's go to CBC News. The number one popular news story in Canada right now, Winnipegger's $300 fine for throwing things at a Canada Goose. A rare case, but a good reminder, lawyer says. Expert says similar incidents likely happen often. Again, I'm going to default to the statute of limitations, but I am sure I may have assaulted a goose at some point in my life, not in a life-threatening way. Geese, the most belligerent, arrogant birds that you can possibly imagine. They're in our parks. I remember when I used to live in Ontario, I did a lot of my business in Campbellford, Ontario. And in Campbellford, there's the canal with all the beautiful geese on it. And they just poop all over the walkways and the grass and the road and everywhere else to get in your way. But people may not know it's actually illegal to do anything about it. A Winnipeg woman has been fined $300 for throwing things at a Canada Goose that got in her way as she tried to get into her friend's apartment building. So know this, that in Canada, where we have rampant drug addiction everywhere, people tripping over drug addicts when they just try to go about their daily business. Actually, let's just check out some of that frustration right now. I retweeted it this morning. I got a fly trying to get me climate change. Miss Roboto, I am so effing sick and tired of having to change course while walking because some junkie is passed out on the stairs because I have to avoid going through a cloud of their meth and crack smoke. I'm not sure CBC is reaching out to Miss Roboto. Maybe they should. No, CBC wants you to know that if a goose is blocking your path, you can't do anything about it. You just got to sit down and wait because Canada geese are a national treasure. The birds are protected by federal law, which makes harassing them an offense. So, in Canada, addicts and criminals have the protection of the courts to continue to harass you. They can stab you in the morning and be released in the evening by the courts so that they can stab you again. They have a right to harass, but Canada geese are protected from harassment. The woman, now 20, pleaded guilty under federal legislation known as the Migratory Bird Convention Act. Anyway, didn't know it was illegal? Doesn't matter, lawyer says. So there's another thing. In Canada, the politicians want you to think that you have basically the right to die. If your house is invaded by people who have guns, you're supposed to just call the cops and cower and hope that you survive the experience. But really, you do have a legal, I can't call it a right, but you have a precedent and you have a privilege in this country to self-defense, but your politicians don't want you to know that. They want you to just lay down and die. But it doesn't matter if you don't know it's illegal. And look what they find. Look what they find. This is the expert. Anytime people see wildlife, they sort of think, well, I was here first. I'm going to do something about this. This animal is in my way, and I'm going to take action. And I think that's where a lot of people come before the court and they say, well, I didn't know it was a crime, but that doesn't matter. We got a finger-wagging white liberal woman. Isn't it amazing how they can just come up with this? Geese. Caitlin Gowerlick, who's dedicating her time, not talking to Miss Roboto about the addicts that are blocking doorways everywhere. No, Caitlin Gowerlick has been writing for CBC Manitoba since 2019. Her work has also appeared in the Winnipeg Free Press. And in 2021, she was part of an award-winning team recognized by the Radio, Television, Digital News Association for its breaking news coverage of the COVID-19 vaccines. I'll give you one guess how she covered the COVID-19 vaccines and got herself an award. I suppose I should explain the sigh for those of you who are listening. I just put a picture up of Mark Carney embracing a man whose near-naked, hairy butt is plastered all over social media right now in his pink thong, and we got rid of one gay-obsessed prime minister, and we seem to have parachuted in from Europe another one. On screen, another article. Video shows Mounties looking for impaired driver asking to speak to man killed last year in a case of mistaken identity. So what did they do? They found 2 white cops looking for a drunk driver who went to the wrong house. And now they're telling us about a black woman and the irreparable harm caused by this mistaken identity. Again, Elizabeth Chu, CBC News, is not contacting Miss Roboto to find out about her grievances about addicts and criminals everywhere. Nope. It's about Mounties knocking on a door asking to speak to a man. Is this really worthy of national attention? And here's the front page. Anti-Hate Coalition denounces presence of white nationalist active clubs in Hamilton, calls for action. Remember 2 weeks ago, they did this on the anniversary, the 100th anniversary, I believe it was the 100th anniversary of Hitler's release of Mein Kampf, where they told us about the rising threat of white nationalism because of fight clubs organized by Second Sons, Jeremy Mackenzie's Junket, other groups and organizations which basically consist of men meeting in public places, which the CBC spins as secret, and doing exercise. Survey hopes to hear how to support communities impacted by hate. Now, Anti-Hate enjoys full access to CBC's Front Page. They get it all the time. In spite of the many investigations that have gone into Anti-Hate, who they are, how they're funded, doesn't seem to matter. This is the second time. That's the only thing I really want to get at. This is the second time that they've done this in a week or two. The whole front page. There's so much going on. We're supposed to have emergencies unending in this country. We actually do, by the way. While our parliamentarians are on vacation, while Mark Carney is partying with rainbow people, we have an economy that is in contraction. We have contracting productivity. We have a crisis that's been ongoing for decades of Canada being gutted, our manufacturing sector being destroyed. We have all of these precarious positions, and we are almost single-handedly engaging the United States in the stupidest trade war. They call it Trump's trade war, but it's actually Canada's obstinacy wanting to protect all of our sacred cows that is aggravating this process, and there isn't a lick of opposition in sight that actually wants to repair the relationship. There's a lot going on. But once again, CBC wants you to know about a few hundred people who are gathering all over the country, spread out. They're not telling you about all the other extremism in Canada. How groups like Hamas and Hezbollah openly organize on social media, in our streets. They're not talking about extremist imams. There's one right now touring Canada, or about to tour Canada, I can't remember the date specifically, that believes in Sharia law. Now, Sharia law should be aberrant to every single thinking Canadian. CBC's not telling you about him. They're not telling you about the open discrimination of women that takes place every single day in mosques across Canada, not all mosques, where the women are made to sit in the back. Remember when they made Kathleen Wynne sit in the back and wear a headscarf? They're not talking about that discrimination. They're not talking about Khalistani separatists that continue to organize in Canada. Separatists? Separatists for what? They just want to carve out a piece of Canada for a nation of their own. For those of you who don't know, the idea of Khalistan is a world away, except we brought it here. It's well-funded, it's extreme, it's represented in government. CBC is not telling you about that. The people that CBC is telling you about have no political power whatsoever. They have no political representation whatsoever. They have no money. And they're few. And yet, it's the second time in as many weeks they're on the front page with every single story guided towards you being propagandized into thinking that this is a way bigger problem than it actually is, while they're not telling you about real problems. And we pay these people $1 billion a year to do this for us. Something far more important that is happening in Canada alongside it's a planned collapse is what it is. The federal government does not have the Canadian public's interest. They take you for idiots and suckers, and largely they're right. most of my audience I wouldn't include among those number, but the fact of the matter is, if you're coming in here, and I doubt you are, but if you're coming in here as a Liberal voter or an NDP voter, well, I'm sorry to say, you're voting against your own interests, and you always have been, and you don't care. You don't care, because it's all about virtue signaling. First National sold to Brookfield, partner in $2.9 billion deal. Canadian mortgage firm co-founded by billionaire Stephen Smith. So there's a common theme. Mark Carney, Brookfield, comes in here, parachuted into the Liberal Party in a fraudulent election where 250,000 people were disenfranchised from their vote, then into the Canadian election where they sold us on this idea of imminent national emergency, orange man bad, and it worked. It worked because the Conservatives adopted the exact same messaging. And again, I'm just going to reemphasize that it's because politicians are downstream of culture. The culture in Canada is a toxic morass. It is an identity crisis wrapped in the Canadian flag. It's an inferiority complex with a massive ego. It is a shoulder chip almost the size of the entire planet. Canada is a basket case. If it was a human being, it would be a crazy person standing on a street corner convinced that they alone know the exact date of the second coming. It's that level of crazy. But the common theme is Brookfield, Carney's former company, which he still maintains holdings in, getting more powerful, feeding off of Canada. I highlighted in other videos how Brookfield, before Carney came along, already had its hands in the Canada pension plan. And how do they do that? Brookfield buys an investment, makes some money. If it gets distressed, they sell it to the CPP, and the CPP is there with a bag of money to buy. And I really think that the ultimate goal over the next months and years is not just the looting of the wealth of Canada and carving it up and selling it to the billionaire class and the financiers, but it's also going to be the looting, or at least the reorganization of the Canada pension plan, which is such a great big fat purse. And these guys want their hands into it. And this is all happening, and I don't understand if Canadians care, if the vast majority of Canadians care. I don't know what it's going to take to wake them up. Pain is the only answer I have, because pain is the great awakener all throughout recorded history. There just doesn't seem to be enough of it yet. This country is so propagandized and so hypnotized that people can't even see what's going on in their own city streets. All the deaths, all the carnage, the absolute perversion of justice that is mainstream in our so-called criminal justice system, the addiction, the cartels, all the things we've highlighted on this channel. It's nothing but bad news. I think at this point, people, if you're living in one of these places where things are really going south real quick, you got to vote with your feet. You got to get out. Saskatchewan's still a pretty good place. It has the same problems. Alberta's a good place, has a lot of the same problems. But you got to go somewhere where you can keep your family safe, where maybe you can live your life and keep speaking up and hope for some kind of leadership to emerge somewhere. Because the thing is, everybody says, you should start a political party. I hear that all the time. And there's people pitch this idea or send me tweets or try to give me jobs. The public ain't ready for it, man. The public still thinks, overall, that the narrative is real, that the propaganda is real. They don't even know what they don't know. And they're immune to people who are trying to show them. Now, the online space, the community, the podcasting community in Canada, with its blemishes and faults, is a growing force, but it is well behind the influence of the U.S. community in terms of Canada. We're always behind the curve. The United States does everything first. And so we're growing. But we still don't have the influence and clout of the mainstream media. And we're likely not going to achieve that for another 5 or 10 years without some kind of catalyst. And that catalyst is probably pain, because pain for people who are convinced that they are on the right and virtuous path is the only teacher that works. Reason doesn't work. Rationality doesn't work. Facts and figures doesn't work. One-liners on the hypnotized are far more effective than books full of reality. It's the challenge we always come up against. But I said I wanted to keep this video light. I think I said that, or I said I was going to begin it on a light note, but I tried to keep it light all the way through. So I guess if I'm going to keep it light, I got to stop there. I want to ask you a question. You, the viewer, why do you watch? What is it about my channel that you watch? I want to hear about this in the comment section. Is it the things I cover? Is it how I cover? Do you like listening to me? Do you like my voice? Do you like my presentation style? What is it? Do you think I'm such a light-blinded idiot that you watch just for pure entertainment purposes, to just see me act like a moron on camera? What is it? I want to hear about it on this Civic holiday. I'm Frank Vaughn. I'll see you in the next one.